Good evening. It's time for Bible Q&A, where you ask the questions and the Bible gives the answers. If you're watching the archive video, then it might not be good evening. It might be good morning or good afternoon or whatever time you're watching. And whether you're watching live or you're watching the archive video for today's Bible Q&A, we appreciate you watching, appreciate you being part of the Bible Q&A audience. The live chat is available to you to post your questions and comments for today's live broadcast. And typically what I do is go back and look at the comments that have come in over the past week to last week's episode, or any of the other videos on my YouTube channel. And so whatever video you're watching at the time that you hear something that you want to ask a question about, or that you want to make a comment about, just post that in the comment section of the video, and it will go to the top of my list for recent comments, and we will address that on Bible Q&A. So whether it's today's episode of Bible Q&A or a previous episode, or any of the videos you see posted for that matter, let me know your questions and comments, and they will be there the next time we come back to Bible Q&A. Before I get to your questions and comments from the previous videos, I just wanted to give kind of a recap of what's gone on this past week, both in the church here at Northside. I preach for the Church of Christ Northside in LaGrange, Georgia, meeting at 1101 Hogansville Road. And we just finished our 2018 lectureship program. The theme of the lectureship was a deeper understanding of faithfulness, not faith, faithfulness. That is, we studied in an in-depth way what it means to really be faithful people of God. And we had a fantastic program. If you were able to visit with us during that program, then you're aware of that. The videos have been posted. I will put in the comment section of the video. I'll just go ahead and do that right now. While I'm doing this, why don't you take an opportunity to share this week's episode of Bible Q&A on your social media sites, and we'll be able to study together with our friends and family in our social media. I'm just going to post real quick the link to the Northside website, and you can go on the Northside website and you can watch the 2018 lectureship program. You can also subscribe to Northside's Facebook channel, or not Facebook. You can like the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube channel, so that when we post the most recent sermons, we broadcast our services live. Hello, James. Good to see you in the audience this evening. We live stream our services, and then, of course, they remain there on the channel, just like the live stream of Bible Q&A. Once this episode is over, it'll remain there on the channel for your future viewing and sharing on your social media networks. And so go to Northside's website, check out that lectureship. All of the lessons are there in the playlist for the lectureship, but it was a deeper understanding of faithfulness. And one of the things that we really focused on was the tendency that people have to kind of key in on one particular thing and say that because of that one thing, a person is faithful. For example, David Hester had a lesson, faithfulness is deeper than 5 acts of worship. Now, we understand that the New Testament teaches that the church expresses its worship to God in 5 avenues of worship. There's no question about that. We study through our New Testament. It's one of the things we discuss frequently on Bible Q&A, because many of the things people claim to do in worship is not what the Bible says actually is worship. You know, we're reminded of Matthew chapter 7, verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, why? Because the things that they claim to be doing in the name of the Lord, that is by his authority, are not actually things that he gave them to do. And so he said, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, we understand that there are 5 acts of worship that the New Testament church engages in on the first day of the week when we come together for worship. We take the Lord's Supper in remembrance of Christ's sacrifice for us. I'll just go ahead and throw that in here. At this point, in mentioning the Lord's Supper, I'd asked the AD 70 group the question about marriage and giving in marriage, because Jesus said in the resurrection, there be neither marriage nor giving in marriage, but we'll be like the angels of heaven. That is, we'll be spiritual beings in the resurrection, where we don't have fleshly relations. And so I asked that question, and the answer to that question was wholly unsatisfactory. Really did a horrible job of twisting the text there of what Jesus said. Well, I said I would ask that question and see what the answer was. You know, when I ask these questions and the answer comes back in a way that is so obviously contrary to what the text says, there's no way you're going to be able to win me over to your point of view, when the only way you can teach your point of view is to twist the scriptures. And so I'll move on from that question now. And I said that the church comes together on the first day of the week to break bread, Acts chapter 20 and verse 7. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and others had brought up this question. That's why I'm going to go to this question next, just because I'm curious to see how you'll answer that question about the Lord's Supper, because the Apostle Paul, in giving the instructions to the church in Corinth about the Lord's Supper in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning verse 23, he says, "For I received from the Lord that which I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same manner, he also took the cup after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. This do as oft as you drink it in remembrance of me.'" Then verse 26, the Apostle Paul says, "For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup," that's the first day of the week, every first day of the week assembly, they came together, they took the Lord's Supper. That's what he's talking about when he says, as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death, notice it, till he comes. Well, the AD 70 crowd says he's already come. So my question is, and I know the answer in part when I ask the question, because I know that you do take the Lord's Supper when you come together on the first day of the week. My question is why? If Paul said take the Lord's Supper till he comes, that we proclaim his death till he comes, and you say he's already come, well then why are you still taking the Lord's Supper? So let me ask it this way. Do you take the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week when you come together? And if so, why? Because in accordance with your view that Jesus has already come, that the second coming has already occurred, shouldn't you also say that the purpose of the Lord's Supper, or the function of the Lord's Supper, to proclaim his death till he comes, that has been fulfilled also? And so if it's been fulfilled, why continue doing it? So, do you take the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week? And if so, why? That's my next question to the AD 70 crowd. And you remember last week I responded to the many comments where people were saying, "Oh yeah, a playlist is a great idea. Yeah, Norm, let's have a playlist where you can have a dialogue back and forth, and you can post videos in response to each other." And I said I'd be perfectly happy to do that. I still haven't gotten an invitation to take part in a video exchange in a playlist, and I know you're still waiting on me to be the one to make the playlist. Why haven't you made the playlist yet? Why haven't one of you made a playlist and invited me to take part in that video exchange? Well, I know why. It's because you want me to provide you an audience on my channel. And I feel no need to do that. I will be perfectly happy to have an exchange with you in a playlist. But I've yet to receive the invitation to do that. What you need to do is make a playlist, and then it will have in the playlist settings, add contributors. And you add my channel in, you add me from my channel as a contributor. That way, videos that I have posted on my channel, I can add to that playlist as a contributor, okay? So, a lot of people said the playlist was a great idea, but I haven't gotten an invitation to take part in a playlist exchange yet. And so I'm curious about that. Well, let me get back to what I was saying about our lectureship. David Hester's lesson on Friday evening was on the fact that faithfulness is deeper than 5 acts of worship. Faithfulness is deeper than 5 acts of worship. There's no question that in the New Testament, the New Testament church, Christians, express their corporate worship or collective worship to God in 5 avenues. That is, they take the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week, as we've already noted, Acts chapter 20 and verse 7 and other passages. They sing songs of praise and devotion to God. And in Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 12 is one of my favorite verses on singing, because it says that Christ is in our assembly, singing with us. In the midst of the assembly, I will sing praise to you. So we sing to God in the assembly. We express that love and devotion to God in song. We hear preaching, as they did in the New Testament church, as we find many passages in the New Testament where when the New Testament church came together, they had preaching from God's Word. For example, Acts chapter 2 and verse 42. When they came together, they prayed. Again, Acts chapter 2 and verse 42. And they had a collection. Those are the 5 things that they did in worship. And the reference for the collection, one among many, would be 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1 and 2. And so, many times people have the idea that as long as you do those things on the first day of the week, well, that makes you a faithful Christian, and that's not true. Faithfulness is much deeper than that. It's not just doing that. It's not just worshiping on the first day of the week that makes someone faithful. Now, it's not possible to be faithful without worshiping on the first day of the week, according to a New Testament instruction. You can't be faithful without doing that, but being faithful is more than that. There are people, I have no doubt, there are people who come together in the first day of the week assembly and do those 5 things that are not faithful. Jesus said in John chapter 4, verses 23 and 24, God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Well, spirit there, that's talking about their mindset, their attitude toward God. So if the motivation for our worship is not love and devotion to God, well then doesn't make us faithful by doing that. Rather, our worship is an expression of a deeper faithfulness. It's the expression of a lifestyle that is lived in faithfulness to God. And that's one of the things that I think is important to point out when we're talking about faithfulness, is that we don't do those things in order to be faithful. Those things are the expression of being faithful. What I mean by that is that if I understand true faithfulness to God, if I understand that commitment that is the root of true faithfulness, no one's going to have to remind me that I need to be in worship on Sunday. No one's going to have to try to push me to be in worship on Sunday. I'm going to do that because I love God, and so that's what we were emphasizing in all of the lessons of the lectureship. Faithfulness is deeper than 5 acts of worship, as I've just been talking about. Faithfulness is deeper than attendance. See, just showing up for the activities that are taking place, showing up for the services on Sunday, for Bible classes, for whatever the activities are, just showing up for those things, that is not what makes a person faithful. That is the expression of a deeper faithfulness. That is, the reason I'm doing that is because of a heart committed to God. And so faithfulness is deeper than just that one thing. And isn't that what we say a lot of times when we talk about someone's faithfulness? Someone will ask the question about a person and their connection with the church, and maybe their faithfulness in general, and the response is, well, they're there every time the doors are open. Well, that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're faithful. Maybe they're there every time the doors are open, because if they're not, their wife will nag them. So certainly that doesn't in and of itself mean they're faithful. If the reason they're there every time the doors are open is because of their love and devotion to God and nothing, and no other, there's nothing else, that there's no ulterior motive for why they're there every time the doors are open, well then yes, that is an expression of their faithfulness. If they're there every time the doors are open because they love their wife and they want to be with their wife where she is, and she's there, so and I've known men like that. That's one of the things that Brother Roger Johnson talked about. That he was delivering the lesson on Saturday night on the topic, faithfulness is deeper than attendance. And he told the story about a man who was at every single worship service, every Bible class, every gospel meeting, everything for, I forget how many years. It was 50-something years. And I've known somebody that way myself. He told the story about a person who was there every time the doors were open with his wife. The person had never even been baptized. He was baptized much later in life. And I don't know if he was telling this story about the same man that I know. I don't think so, because he said he baptized him, and the one I'm thinking of wasn't baptized by Brother Johnson. Just being there at the worship services didn't necessarily mean he was faithful. He wasn't even a Christian. So how could he be faithful if he wasn't even a Christian? So faithfulness is much deeper than just showing up for services. That's important for us to understand, is that showing up for the services, being in attendance, is the expression of a deeper faithfulness, a heart committed to God, so that there's nowhere else you would rather be. If the reason you're there is because of your love for God, and there's nowhere else you would rather be, you have no ulterior motives for being there, you're there because you love God, well then yes, that is part of your faithfulness. And it's not possible to be faithful without being in attendance in the worship of God and in the study of God's Word, and as an active member of the church. It's not possible to be faithful without doing that. But if the reason you're doing that is for some ulterior motive other than that you love God, well, then it's not really faithfulness. And then Sunday morning, Brother Frank Lyons, who's a member here at Northside, had the lesson, Faithfulness is Deeper Than Bible Study. You know, there's a lot of people that study the Bible that don't obey God. Isn't that, well, I started out with that, Matthew 7:21. Many say to me, Lord, Lord, and shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. Many that say to me, Lord, Lord, shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. But he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. And Brother Frank brought a great lesson showing that, you know, you can study the Bible, you can know everything it says, but if you're not doing it, if the motivation behind your study of God's Word is not so that you can develop the lifestyle that is obedient to God, well then that in and of itself doesn't make you faithful. Just studying the Bible doesn't make you faithful. Rather, it's doing what the Bible says. And so that was a great lesson. And I hope you'll go over to, I keep bumping the table and shaking the camera, and I apologize for that. But I hope you'll go over to Northside's website. I posted it in the comments, and you'll watch those lessons. Sunday morning, I had the lesson, Faithfulness is Deeper Than Baptism. Many times people have the idea that when they're baptized, they're finished, that they've done what they need to do. And so there's nothing more they need to do. They're baptized. I've baptized people and then gone back to study with them after they've been baptized, and they were like, well, why do I need to study? I've already been baptized. Well, you know, that's the beginning of a person's growth in Christ, not the end of it. And so faithfulness is deeper than baptism. And then Bobby Gayton from Cartersville, Georgia, had the lesson Sunday night. Faithfulness is deeper than goodness. See, we think, you know, we think a lot of people are good people. I know a lot of people that I would say, yes, he's a good person. That's a good person. Yet they're not obedient to God according to the Bible. So my idea of good isn't necessarily God's idea of good. So just my thinking that they're a good person doesn't make them faithful. Cornelius, you look at the way Cornelius is described in Acts chapter 10, a devout man, prayed all the time, gave alms, he was generous, helped the poor. Everybody loved him. Certainly, people would say he was a good person, but he still had to obey the gospel. See, his goodness didn't necessarily make him faithful. He had to obey the gospel and live according to the gospel to be faithful to God. And so it was a great lectureship. We had great lessons and benefited very much from them. Hello, Gwendolyn. Good to see you watching this evening. You're off today, so you can catch the show. Yeah, out there on the West Coast, it's still a little early, isn't it? So it's good you're able to be with us live today. I know you typically watch the archive after the program's over, but it's good you can be with us live this evening. So it's good to see you watching. Well, that was our lectureship program this week, and we really enjoyed that. And again, I hope you'll go to Northside's website and you'll watch that series of lessons. I think you'll really enjoy it, and I pray you'll benefit from it. You'll grow in your knowledge of God and how to be faithful to Him. You know, something else from this past week that has really been disturbing to me. I mean, no joke. I mean, I'm not using hyperbole or anything. I mean, I'm disturbed by it. Is this whole thing over the Supreme Court nominee? And you know, I don't want to make this a political statement or you know, say what side of the aisle or what. I don't want to do that. But I want to ask the question, does is there anybody who is actually interested in the truth? Does anybody care what the truth is? Now here, here you got a guy, and I don't, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Constitutional Party, I don't care what party you put the guy in. He has a 30-year career or more. I forget the exact number of years he's been in his profession. Been a judge for many years. Been in top political positions as legal counsel to presidents and on different committees. And, he has a long career, a long record. And all through that time, working closely with professional women. And when he was going through his confirmation hearings, had character witnesses all the way back to high school, college, professional career. All these people he had worked with, all vouching for his character. Never in the course. Now, this is what really bothers me. This is what really disturbs me, is that the majority of people don't even know that before his confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court, that prior to that, because of the different positions he'd worked in, he had already had 6 background checks. FBI background checks, 6 of them, 6 times through the course of his career. The FBI had conducted background checks. Now, I've never had an FBI background check. I've had a GBI, that's Georgia Bureau of Investigations. I've had a GBI background check because I worked for a company in a security position that was... it was a NATO contract. I'll put it that way. So I was working on a NATO contract. And because it was a NATO contract, I had to have classified clearance. I had to have classified clearance to be in the building. I had to have classified clearance because being in the building, I would come into contact with classified materials, classified government materials, and sensitive company materials. And so to qualify for that position, I had to pass a background check conducted by the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigations. Now, I really don't know how to compare the thoroughness of a GBI background check for classified clearance. I didn't have top secret clearance. I had classified clearance. That's like a step down from top secret. Okay, I would say, just, and really I have, the only first-hand experience I have to go on is what a GBI background check looked like. And the people they talked to. I had friends, because I had to list out references, and people I didn't even list as references told me that they heard from them, and how they checked into me. And so I'm just guessing that somebody who would be working in the White House, someone who would be working in foreign affairs, that had to pass an FBI background check, not a state Bureau of Investigation, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, but the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. I would just assume, well, I don't really have to assume, I pretty well know, that would be a much more thorough investigation, much more thorough. The guy had already passed 6 FBI background checks before the confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court. Never the slightest hint of any misconduct. To the contrary, all of the references checking into all of the references all the way back to high school. They did the same, the GBI did that to me, talking to high school friends. Nothing ever about any kind of misconduct of a sexual nature like he was being accused of. And yet, at his Supreme Court confirmation hearings, he had already gone through the hearings. The hearings were over. And it was only after the hearings were over and it was clear that he had passed with flying colors, there was nothing about his qualifications, which is what the advising consent clause is all about. The president gets to nominate who he wants to the Supreme Court. That's one of the benefits of being elected president, is you get to pick your nominees. Okay? The advice and consent of the Senate is to confirm the qualifications of the person. Well, they had already done that. And it was only after that had already been done that all of this stuff about sexual misconduct and sexual abuse and all this stuff came out. And they called for a seventh. Now, see, you didn't hear that. All you heard was that they wanted an FBI investigation. You didn't hear that this would be the seventh one that the guy had been through just in the normal course of his profession. And again, the FBI background check came back and said, we didn't find anything different than we found the first 6 times. And yet, even after that, the guy was smeared, abused. I mean, it was just horrible. And again, I don't care if the guy's a Republican, a Democrat. I don't care who the president is that nominated him. If Barack Obama nominated 2, both of those got confirmed, and none of this stuff went on with those 2. Republicans voted for them to confirm them because they went through the advice and consent process. They determined them to be qualified for the position and confirmed them. I don't care what political party the guy's in or whatever. What disturbs me is that even after the senators had all of this information, they knew beyond any shadow of a doubt, I just found out they already had the letter from one of Ford's, I think it was her ex-boyfriend or something, wrote a letter saying that he had witnessed her giving advice on how to get through polygraphs. They already had all of that. That's why the woman asking the questions asked that about, have you ever counseled anybody on how to get through a background, how to get through a polygraph? And she said, no, never. Now see, when she said no, never, and they had sworn testimony that she actually had, every one of them knew she was lying. Every one of them knew she was lying. And even after all of that, and the motion had been made for cloture, the hearings were over, the debates were over, even after all of that, you had senators, Democrat senators, getting up on the floor of the Senate and giving speech after speech after speech as to why the senators should vote no in confirming Brett Kavanaugh. And every one of them brought up the accusations that had been made against him that had been proven false, that had no corroborating evidence at all. They did not give him the slightest iota of the presumption of innocence. You know, in America, one of the great blessings of being an American is that we have the presumption of innocence. We are presumed innocent until proven guilty. There was no proof that the guy did anything. And Ford, the one who made the accusation, couldn't remember anything about when it even happened. And things that she said in her testimony were proven to be absolutely false. And yet today, protesters are out saying he's a sexual predator. He can't coach his daughter's basketball teams anymore. He can't teach anymore. And people are out there saying that a sexual predator has been appointed to the Supreme Court. And so I have to ask the question, what about truth? What about honesty? You know, how can we claim that America is a Christian nation? How can we claim or ask God to bless America when we see a total disregard for truth, for honesty, completely? Because the people who should be able to say, you know, look, all these protests are based on lies. And it's not the first time. What about the hands up, don't shoot thing? And you can you can give me the thumbs down if I'm telling the truth. And if you want to thumb down, you know, go ahead. But the hands up, don't shoot thing was proven to be eyewitnesses said. People who saw it happen said he never had his hands up. He never said, please don't shoot. That never happened. And yet people still say, hands up, don't shoot. People still say, Brett Kavanaugh's a sexual predator. People still say, you know, believe all women. It's very concerning. And you know, one of the things I had said about this whole situation, you may have seen it. I don't know if you watched that clip or not, but if you look in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and I'll start reading with verse 5. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 5. Do you not remember that when I was still with you, I told you these things? And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion. I know people ask a lot of questions about this passage. God will send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Well, the point of the text there is that if you don't love the truth, if you're not willing to accept the truth, if the truth is laid out there and you're not willing to accept it, and the truth in this that I've been talking about is that there is absolutely no reason, no evidence, no nothing. There's absolutely no reason at all to believe Ford and to assume guilt on Kavanaugh. No reason at all. There's no evidence. There's the background of the whole situation. If you look at it, there's no reason. There's no evidence. No nothing. But if you have a political agenda, if you have a preconceived position, if you have ulterior motives other than the truth, if your motivation in all of it is not the truth, the love of the truth, I want the truth, I love the truth, I'm going to buy the truth and sell it not, I'm going to hold on, I'm going to cling to the truth. If that is my motivation, well then I have no reason at all, none, to believe that the guy is guilty. But if you don't love the truth, if you don't believe the truth, if your interest is not in the truth, well then the only alternative to the truth is a lie. The only alternative to the truth is strong delusion. That's what it means when it says God will send them strong delusion. See, there's only two alternatives. You either believe the truth and accept the truth, or if you reject that, that leaves you with a lie. And you see the way that things are going in our society. And it's very disturbing. Because it just seems like there are so many people that have no interest at all in the truth. You can show them the truth. You can reason with them from the truth. You can use logic and reason and common sense and and try to get across to people. And because they've already got their mind made up, because they have, like I said, they have an agenda, they have a position that they're going to defend to it's like this whole thing with the AD 70 group. I put them in the same camp. Now I know, politically speaking, I very seriously doubt they'd be out there with protesters, just in total denial of all of the evidence. But religiously, there's no way that you can harmonize their position with the scriptures. And yet, because they have an agenda, because they have a position that they will defend it tooth and nail to the death. Where is the truth? What about the truth? Why not? See, I don't have an agenda. I don't have a political agenda. I don't have a social agenda. I don't have a religious agenda. I have no agenda whatsoever in anything. All I care about is that I want to know the truth. I want to follow the truth. Whether it's the Bible, whether it's a court case, whether it's a congressional hearing, whatever it is, my one and only interest. That's, I would say that's why I am where I am. Because all I cared about when I was wanting to develop a life that was pleasing to God, and I was looking into the Bible, and I've read the Tao Te Ching, I've read the Hindu Vedas, I've read portions of Islam, and it didn't take me long to see I don't want that. I've dabbled in all manners. I was a New Age hippie idiot, I guess would be the best, and none of that made any sense. None of it made any sense. And because it didn't make sense, because there was no truth in it, I kept looking. And when I came to the Bible, I looked at it honestly and openly. I didn't look at it from a denominational perspective. I didn't look at it from a sectarian perspective. I didn't look at it from any particular. I looked at it I wanted to know, what does it say? What does it teach? I had no agenda other than the truth. So that's why I am where I am. And that's what I tell people all the time. I've told the AD 70 guys that same thing. I've told Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and Baptists and Methodists and Presbyterians, told them all the same thing. If you can show me from this book where I'm supposed to be what you say I'm supposed to be, whether it's Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Baptist, what, if you can show me from this book where I'm supposed to be that, I'll be that. Because all I care about is the truth. All I care about is obeying the truth. I want the truth. And it is really disturbing to me when I see the evidence that that's not where most people are. That's not most people's mindset. I can't count the number of times I've sat with people and I have shown them just beyond any shadow of a doubt. I've even had them tell me, yes, I see what you're saying from the scripture, but I'm happy where I am and I'm not leaving. Well, what about the truth? I mean, you see that where you are is not in the truth. So why don't you want to be in the truth? So, you know, it's just this past week has really, it has really, I'm telling you, I'm disturbed because it just is, how many thousands are out there probably right now, probably right now, out there with picket signs and, you know, going on about who in their right mind, and that's the problem, they're not in their right mind. I've said it numerous times, I'm going to continue to say it, and this is not a political statement. Understand me, this is not a political statement. It applies to religion, it applies to society, it applies to politics, whatever it applies, wherever it is, it applies. Liberalism is a mental disorder. It makes no sense. It has no basis in truth. The only way that you could really honestly think that you were in the right place in these things is just in complete ignorance or broken. Either it's extreme ignorance or it's broken. That's the only way. And so it really bothers me. And you know, I was thinking today I'm gonna start a new program. I got Bible Q&A, got this and that Thursday. I've been thinking about a couple of things to add to the channel. So I was thinking today I may start doing another program called Nothing But the Truth. Right? Isn't that what they say when they swear people into court? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I swear. That is my oath, my vow. You know, I know people say, "Oh, Norm, the Bible says don't take vows." Well, again, there's, you know, you don't understand the context of the statement. The Bible, you know, doesn't prohibit taking vows. There's all kinds of vows in the Bible. The Bible prohibits making vows that would contradict or subvert your obligations to God. That's first, right? So yeah, just the truth. I will tell you just the truth, and I don't care what it is, whether it's the Bible, whether it's if I know what the truth, if I don't know what the truth is, I'll do my very best to find it out and tell just the truth, nothing else. That's all I'm ever going to tell you is just the truth. And I've also been thinking about doing Bible Q&A morning minute, just doing a quick, you know, here's the answer to this question, just every morning, just a quick thing that maybe we can discuss in more detail on these Thursday nights. Well, let me go to the comments. I got off on my rant. Okay, let me get down off my soapbox now and get back to the comments. Okay, let's see. I replied to Gwendolyn. Samantha, please be praying for our country and freedom. Vote this November. Isn't that one of the great things about being an American is that when we see how broken the system is, we don't have to riot and go burn things down, and we can fix it. We have the opportunity to fix it every 2 years. We can change them out. get rid of some congressmen that need to go, and try again with some new ones. And if they get in there and do the same things, if they're just as broken as the ones we vote out, then we next time their election comes up, we do it again. Make some replacements. You know, I might vote for an incumbent the first time if they've been doing a good job, but after that, I think they need to be replaced. And so that's right. Get out there and when you go in there, don't go in there to vote a letter by somebody's name. Now I'm going to tell you, because like I just said, I'm going to tell you the truth. There is no way I could vote Democrat. And I'm not registered. I'm not a registered anything. I'm not a registered Republican. I'm certainly not a registered Democrat. I could not be in good conscience. I couldn't be a registered Democrat because of the things that the Democrat Party promotes. But I'm not a registered Republican. I'm not a registered independent. I'm not a registered libertarian, I'm not a registered anything. I'm a Christian. So when I go in the voting booth, I'm going to vote my Christian principles, which means I'm never ever going to vote for somebody who believes it's okay to kill unborn babies. Not a chance. Not a chance. And even though a Democrat candidate might say that they personally are opposed to abortion, I'm glad. But if I vote for you, then I'm going to give party power to the party that in their platform promotes what they falsely claim is freedom of choice. Now, I would say the first choice goes to the most innocent person. And the most innocent person in that scenario is the unborn baby. That unborn baby has not done anything wrong to anyone ever. The pregnant person can't say that. So I'm going to default to the most innocent person in the scenario. And I know what the baby wants to do. The baby wants to live. I know that because of the very disturbing and gruesome imagery I've seen of abortions being performed and the baby trying to get away from the instruments of its execution. I wish I had never seen that, but I know the baby wants to live. I say I wish I had never seen it. In a sense, I'm glad I saw the documentation of what actually happens, because anybody who says that should be a person's right to do that is completely deluded. Completely deluded. So there's no way I could ever vote Democrat because they promote that. Possibly Libertarian, because Libertarians say it's a states' right issue, which it really should be a states. If Nevada wants to say, we have legalized abortion and Georgia doesn't, then I'm gonna say, okay, well, I want to live in Georgia, not Nevada, right? I can exercise my choice in that way. So I vote, and this is what I said before. I'm not a registered party member for any party, but the way things are now with the system, the way it currently is, right, and that could change, but the way it is right now, I vote anti-Democrat because I don't want the Democrats to have any power at all. I want to see as few Democrats as possible in positions of power. So I'm going to vote with the person that is the most likely to be able to unseat the Democrat. So you can say that I shouldn't do that or whatever, but Democrats are in favor of legalized murder, and I'm not. So I want them out of power. I wish that there was not a single Democrat in office, not one. Okay. Let's see, Gwendolyn. That's what's going on while all of these denominations, with all these denominations, they refuse to obey truth. So sad. That's right. You know, and I think denominationalism is largely to blame for the way society is. You know, why would I worry about being good? Why would I worry about being righteous in a religious system that teaches me that whatever I do, I can't be lost? You know, once I've been saved, I can never be lost. So, you know, why not go and, you know, get 5 women pregnant and then try to convince them to have an abortion? I can't be lost for doing that, right? So I think that I think denominationalism is partly to blame for our society being the way it is. With denomination, not only because of some of the things they teach, like once saved, always saved false doctrine, which is just a devil's lie. But because of the inherent divisiveness of denominationalism, and people look at that and they say, well, you know, here you got all these people claiming to use the same book, and they're all divided up. Some believe this, some believe that, some say this, some say that, and they all, you know, why would I want to be a Christian? Why would I want to be in that? I myself said that before I obeyed the gospel. I remember distinctly, I was standing in the kitchen of my house arguing with my mother as a teenager. And I said, well, why would I want to be a part of any church when they all claim to use one book and they all argue with each other about who's right and who's wrong? See, in my ignorance, like I said before, you know, it's either because you're ignorant or because you're broken that you're liberal. Okay, so in my ignorance, I thought it was the Bible's fault that the religious world was so divided. I thought it was something wrong with the Bible that caused that division. Well, then later when I actually went and, see, I was ignorant, I didn't know what the Bible actually said. But then later when I went and started studying the Bible and reading the Bible, it didn't take me very long. And, you know, I remember reading the Bible and you know, thinking, well, the Bible says that there's not supposed to be any division. It's not the Bible's fault all these churches are divided up over, you know, this and that and arguing. They're arguing about things the Bible doesn't even say. They're divided over things the Bible doesn't even say. It's not the Bible's fault. So then I just wanted to know the truth of what the Bible said. That's why I am where I am. I would not be a part of a church. I would not be a part of a congregation that didn't just teach what the Bible teaches. That didn't just uphold what the Bible teaches. I just want the truth. So you're right, Gwendolyn. It is so sad, so sad. Samantha, I'm never voting Democrat. Not the current Democrat Party. There's no way. Now, you know, maybe at the next Democratic convention, there'll be some drastic changes, and they'll say we need to be pro-life and pro-God, and we need to stop trying to force people to accept homosexuality. You know, now the Republicans don't say that they want to outlaw homosexuality or they want to outlaw, you know, whatever. They respect individual choice, and I'm fine with that. You know, God doesn't you know, don't you think that God could just, you know, say no such thing as homosexuals? Well, sure he could, but he's not going to do that because people have to choose for themselves. And so, and the Democrats could change so that they were, you know, that their differences, you know, the differences in the party, if they were just over, you know, political methodology or different approaches to how to run the country and different things, and not trying to legislate morality. See, I think that's one of the problems we get. It is not the government's responsibility to legislate morality. It's the church's responsibility to teach morality. That's what Paul said in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 11, that the church is the organization that God ordained from eternity to make known his manifold wisdom to the world. It's the church's responsibility to teach morality. It's not the government's responsibility to legislate morality. The government's responsibility is to enforce the law, protect the innocent, and punish the guilty. Romans 13. That's the government's responsibility. That's all I want them to do. And stay out of my business otherwise. Right? So, you're right. There's no way I could vote for the Democratic Party the way it is right now. Gwendolyn, don't forget about the Democrats' views on same-sex marriages. That's what I was just talking about. Now, you know, yeah, I may differ with people a little bit on that. I don't think the government should be involved in marriages at all. Do you know, now this may come as a shocker to you, but like I said, I'm only going to tell you the truth. The only reason the government got involved in marriage to begin with, and now you have to go get a marriage license from the probate court. You didn't have to used to do that. Used to get married, you'd go to your preacher or your religious leader, whoever that was, or you could go to a judge or a ship captain or somebody like that. Somebody that was recognized, that was a recognized authority to be able to do that. Okay? And tell them you want to get married, and that person would say, okay, well, you can get married. And so, I don't remember exactly when it was. I can't give you a date. But the reason that states started requiring a court-issued marriage license to get married was to prevent mixed marriage, black and white, to prevent whites from marrying blacks or blacks from marrying whites. It's based in racism. The government doesn't have any business being in marriage. The government doesn't have any business telling who can marry who, right? If this idiot Smelly wants to marry their goldfish, why should the government be able to tell them they can't? I mean, may need to go get them and throw them in an insane asylum. May need to have them committed to protect society. Romans 13, that's the government's responsibility, is to protect society from people like Smelly. But it's not the government's responsibility to tell people who they can marry and who they can't marry. So if it were up to me, I'd just say government needs to get out of the marriage business. You got to go pay for a marriage license so the government makes their dime on it, and they can legislate who can marry who. So the Supreme Court comes out and says, well, the states have to recognize same-sex marriage, and doesn't matter what the voters of the state say. If the voters of the state say, well, we don't want same-sex marriage in this state, the Supreme Court come out and said, well, it doesn't matter what you want. Well, the government needs to get out of it altogether. The government's responsibility is to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. The reason I called you an idiot, Smelly, is because of the comments you made that at least YouTube blocked because of the kind of things you're saying, and and you're trying to instigate something on here with people who are trying to have an honest discussion. That's why. So there you go. Well, go be depressed somewhere else. And so the government's Romans 13 is very clear about the government's responsibility. Protect the innocent and punish the guilty. That's it. Other than that, they need to leave me alone. So I think government should be out of the marriage business altogether. Let me remove Smelly here. Remove. Oh, that one, I can't remove that one because it's already been, I tell you. Okay, well, we're over time. It's 8:03. If there's any other questions or comments, post them in the comment section down below. and I'll be happy to answer your questions and comments. I didn't get to last week's comments. I wanted to say hello to Gwendolyn. She asked, were the people baptized under John's baptism considered, well, there you go, Smelly. Were the people baptized under John's baptism considered members of the church in Acts 2 when the Bible states the Lord added them to the churches? That's a great question, Gwendolyn, and we'll discuss that on a future broadcast. And then James said, I've never heard the perspective about the thief on the cross. I found your theory that the thief had at least heard of Jesus before that day and was probably baptized. That is John's baptism. Very interesting. Well, James, I'm glad that that was interesting to you, and if it prompted deeper study on your part, then I accomplished what I set out to do with this program. My purpose in this program is not to tell you what you should believe and what you shouldn't believe, but to prompt deeper study. We're here to study the Bible together, except for, some. We're here to study the Bible together and to dig deeper for the beautiful treasure that's there. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you, Lord willing, Thursday. If not Thursday, then I'll see you, Lord willing, next week.